Good morning, Kindred. How are y'all doing today? You ready for the next chapter in Ezekiel? Today we're going to start with chapter 21 of this great book that tells us more about the end time prophecies than perhaps the book of Revelation. We're soon to be getting to that part, so let's get started. Do you remember when we learned in Ezekiel chapter 16 that our Father married the city of Jerusalem, thereby choosing her as his dwelling place for all of eternity? We also learned several times in this book of Ezekiel so far that the king of Babylon, the Antichrist or spurious Messiah, comes upon the final generation. And I just want to add, I think that's our generation that we're living in today. Then in the last chapter, after we were admonished to do our homework and check out our beliefs in his word to see if we are polluted by men's traditions, we were told that each individual would be tested in the wilderness and give answer to our Father face to face. He said also that he is eventually going to gather all Israel back to him on Mount Zion. Ezekiel then spoke a parable in the closing verses of chapter 20, and the elders of Israel, who were steeped in the traditional stinky idol worship of their fathers, wondered why he did that because they didn't understand it. Therefore, just so no one is left with an excuse, Yahweh is going to explain the parable in chapter 21. Ezekiel 21, verse 1. And the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, verse 2, Son of man, set thy face toward Jerusalem, and drop thy word toward the holy places, and prophesy against the land of Israel. This is the part of the job description of the end-time watchman of Yahweh. Teach the word of Yahweh, and always remember to work in what is about to happen in the holy place. The king of Babylon, Antichrist, or the spurious Messiah, is coming to town. You can sing it to the tune of Santa Claus is coming to town. You better watch out. The word drop, nataf, Hebrew 5197, a primitive root, to ooze, i.e. distill gradually. By implication, to in drops. Figurative, to speak by inspiration, dropping, prophesy, prophesiah. Teach after the manner of a gentle rain. Don't hit them with a hurricane. Verse 3, And say to the land of Israel, Thus saith Yahweh, Behold, I am against thee, and will draw forth my sword out of his sheath, and will cut off from thee the righteous and the wicked. Verse 19 will document that this sword is the sword of correction, the sword of the king of Babylon, not the sword of Revelation 1, verse 16. But though it is the king of Babylon's sword, Yahweh calls it his because he draws it, i.e., brings it forth to chastise and test. See verse 13, the people who dwell on the earth. Ezekiel 21, verse 4. Seeing then that I will cut off from thee the righteous and the wicked, therefore shall my sword go forth out of his sheath against all flesh from the south to the north. All flesh simply means everyone. Verse 5. That all flesh may know that I, Yahweh, have drawn forth my sword out of his sheath, it shall not return any more. Yahweh will not put away the sword of correction until it has accomplished its mission according to Yahweh's plan. Verse 6. Sigh, therefore, thou son of man, with the breaking of thy loins, and with bitterness sigh before their eyes. Yahweh wants Ezekiel to groan and sigh as if in anguish and full of grief or bitterness, so that everyone can see him. To demonstrate what? The answer is found in the next verse. It is because of the announcement or tidings he just made. The sword of the king of Babylon is coming. You can count on it. Wake up. Verse 7, And it shall be when they say unto thee, Wherefore sighest thou? That thou shalt answer, For the tidings, because it cometh, and every heart shall melt, and all hands shall be feeble, and every spirit shall faint, and all knees shall be weak as water. Behold, it cometh, and shall be brought to pass, saith Yahweh Elohim. This is prophetic, but it is very simple. The king of Babylon, the Antichrist or spurious Messiah, is coming to Jerusalem, and everyone, including the righteous and the wicked, will face him. Verse 8. Again, the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, verse 9, Son of man, prophesy and say, Thus saith Yahweh, Say, a sword is sharpened, and also furbished. A sword, repeated for emphasis, like warning, warning. The sword is sharpened and brightly polished and ready to make a sore slaughter. Next verse. In the prophetic sense, this means the slaughtering of souls, the inner man, not the flesh, the outer man. Ezekiel 21, verse 10. It is sharpened to make a sore slaughter. It is furbished that it may glitter. Should we then make mirth? It contemneth the rod of my son as every tree. I'm going to stop just a minute because I'm going to look up that word, contemneth. Well, I see here Lance explains that it means to spurn or abhor, meaning it is also against his sons. And the sword is not only sharpened to cut quickly and easily, but it glitters, which is barak in Hebrew, meaning lightning. Barak, Hebrew 1300 from Hebrew 1299, barak, lightning, by analogy, a gleam, concrete, a flashing sword, bright, glittering sword, lightning. Did you know that Barak is the surname of the current leader of Israel, the land of Israel, which is the location that this prophecy is about? His name is Ehud Barak, and his last name means lightning. Could this be another sign we're getting close to the time when the king of Babylon shows up with his glittering sword? Well, Barak, first name Ehud, means united. Let's see now, 1 Thessalonians 5:3. For when they shall say peace and safety, i.e. unity, which is Ehud is pushing for, then sudden destruction, the desolator, i.e. Satan, cometh upon them. Luke 10:18. And he said unto them, I beheld Satan as lightning falling from heaven. Okay, I'm going to stop here a minute because since this study was written, we also had another Barak who occupied the White House in Washington, D.C. Oh my. We'll talk about that maybe later. Okay, verse 11. And he hath given it to be furbished, that it may be handled. This sword is sharpened, and it is furbished, to give it into the hand of the slayer. The slayer is the future king of Babylon, the abomination who makes desolate, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, i.e. the Antichrist or spurious Messiah himself. He wields the sword of chastisement, sharpened for destruction. That's right. Yahweh uses Satan as a rod of correction. Verse 12. Cry and howl, Son of man, for it shall be upon my people, it shall be upon all the princes of Israel. Terrors by reason of the sword shall be upon my people. Smite therefore upon thy thigh. The it is the sword of the king of Babylon, and again it is coming to Jerusalem, even upon the princes or leaders and all his people. So slap your thighs, all you watchmen, and get the people's attention. Hello, citizens of the United States of America, Canada, Great Britain, Germany, Australia, Denmark, France, and all the world. Guess who's coming to clean your biblically illiterate spiritual clock? Ezekiel 21, verse 13. Because it is a trial, and what if the sword contemn even the rod? It shall be no more, saith Yahweh Elohim. The king of Babylon comes to test all those who dwell on the earth. Here's the definition of the word trial in verse 13. Trial equals Bakan, Hebrew 974, a primitive root to test, especially metals. General and figurative, to investigate, examine, prove, tempt, try, or trial. So you mean to tell me Yahweh is going to use the king of Babylon, Satan, even to test Yahweh's own servants? This is where the homework comes in handy. We can search the historical records for a type. Let's see, oh yes, King Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, the world-ruling type of king of Babylon of the last days, tossed Yahweh's servants, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, into the fiery furnace. I'd call that a test, wouldn't you? Actually, I'd call that a final exam. Of course, they had on the gospel armor, Ephesians 6, so they were not harmed in any way. Ezekiel 21, verse 14. Thou, therefore, son of man, prophesy and smite thine hands together, and let the sword be doubled the third time, the sword of the slain. It is the sword of the great men that are slain, which entereth into their privy chambers. So, therefore, son of man, this means you, and if you are a watchman of Yahweh, get teaching and clap your hands to get the people's attention, and brandish the sword twice, thrice, to symbolize the great massacre they face. Stop here a minute. What is really preying on my mind right now is that type of sword, which was a needle. I'm thinking of the jab. How many of Yahweh's children got the jab and didn't listen to their spirit? Anyway, we'll discuss that maybe a later time. Verse 15. I have set the point of the sword against all their gates, that their heart may faint, and their ruins be multiplied. Ah, it is made bright, it is wrapped up for the slaughter. Again, that brings to mind that COVID-19 slaughter that was foisted upon the whole earth. The sword is made bright as lightning. Everyone gets to see it, flashed and wielded about by the king of Babylon, who will be Satan posing as Yeshua Christ. Most people, including the majority of Christians, will get their souls cut really badly. You see, one must have the gospel armor on in order to be protected from the devil, the king of Babylon. Here's how the Apostle Paul said it. Ephesians 6:11, put on the whole armor of Theos, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. By the way, you can't buy gospel armor, nor acquire some by going to church and singing praises. It grows on you line by line, verse by verse, either covering your nakedness or replacing your polluted garments as you study Yahweh's word. There is no other way. Then you are not only protected from the devil, You get to carry around the most powerful sword in all the universe. Dragons, beware, Ephesians 6, verse 17. And take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of Theos. Let's repeat Ezekiel 21, verse 15. I have set the point of the sword against all their gates, that their heart may faint and their ruins be multiplied. Ah, it is made bright, it is wrapped up for the slaughter. How many of Yahweh's children were afraid when they heard about the virus, that pandemic of COVID-19? How many were afraid and didn't trust Yahweh's protection? They didn't have that armor on. And many of them got that jab and were slaughtered, sadly. Anyway, let's continue. The Hebrew word for ruins is miksho, which means a stumbling block. Ruins, mikshal or shol, mikshol. Hebrew 4383 or mikshol, masculine from Hebrew 3782. Kashal, a stumbling block, literal or figurative, obstacle, enticement, specifically an idol. Scruple, cause to fall, offense. Nothing offered, ruin, stumbling block. It is written that the king of Babylon in the end times, i.e. Satan, the son of perdition, comes as Antichrist, the spurious Messiah, and deceives the whole world except Yahweh's elect into believing he is Yeshua. As Paul wrote in 2 Thessalonians 2, when the son of perdition shows up in Jerusalem claiming to be Yahweh, there will be a great apostasy, which means Christians by the millions will begin to worship him as Yeshua Christ. The reason they stumble and fall is because their church fed them bad doctrine, like the vision of Margaret MacDonald's rapture theory. That's right, many Christian churches of today hold Satan's doctrines. I'm going to stop here a minute. I know of a friend of mine who goes to a church, I'm not going to say which one, but his church, and they have churches all over the world, said it was okay to get the jab. Go ahead. You don't have to if you don't want to, but it's all right to do it. So all those fearful Christians that didn't have that armor, such as the faith, got the jab and are suffering as a result. Blood clots, cancer, heart attacks, you name it. Okay, let's continue. Here are Christ's own words concerning today's church of Pergamos. Revelation 2, verse 14. But I have a few things against thee, because thou hast there them that hold the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed unto idols, and to commit fornication. And generation after generation follow in the footsteps of their fathers. Are you polluted? And so it is that the king of Babylon will be a stumbling block to most Christians, even as Christ is to many today, Romans 9:33, because they haven't checked out Yahweh's word. So number one, they don't know there are two Yeshua Christ, the real one and the fake one. And number two, they believe the woman's vision of any moment rapture. Read this verse again. Remember, this is one of 5 of the 7 churches of Revelation that have big problems because they teach bad doctrine. They are polluted after the manner of their fathers, and they will fall and worship before the king of Babylon, believing, of course, that he is Yeshua Christ, the Messiah returned. Therefore they will be slain by his sword, brought upon them as promised and declared by the word of Yahweh, time after time after time. Oops, I think I went down too far here. Even once more in this 21st chapter of Ezekiel, it will happen exactly as it is written. Okay, that ends this first section of Ezekiel 21, and we'll pick it up next time beginning in Ezekiel 21, verse 16. Until then, have a blessed day, and Yahweh bless.